Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, RMTC-DHH. TA Live, Keeping It Real, Theory of Mind, with Randi and Mitchell from FSDB, April 8th, 2020.
Welcome to this April TA Live, Keeping It Real, Theory of Mind. My name is Kara Wilmot with Resource Materials and Technology Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and I'm joined today by Randi Mitchell from the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind. She is the coordinator of the professional development at FSDB. Thank you, Randi, so much for being here today and last week. We always enjoy it when you come to help present with us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to you and turn my video off.
Okay. All right, I have my mic on, the video's on me. All right, so we're talking about one of my favorite topics. So for those of you that went into Flipgrid, you saw like my excitement for Flipgrid. Flipgrid's definitely my favorite ed tech topic, but this is my favorite non-tech educational topic. It's theory of mind. I'm all about how the brain works and development and language. That's kind of like my favorite things to like study and research and go to presentations about. So I'm very excited to share one of my favorite things, which is theory of mind and how we can support it in the classroom. Okay, so I'm going to go over what is theory of mind, just to make sure that we're on the same page on what I'm talking about. We're going to discuss the struggles, like the struggles that you have as a result of a weak theory of mind. So if your theory of mind's weak, what is that going to look like as the person's behaviors or how they answer questions, that type of thing. And then last, I'm going to talk about some activities that you can do in your classroom to support theory of mind. I did keep it classroom-based since that was the motivation of this presentation, but a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about could be kind of tweaked to fit your distant learning that you're doing right now. As you can see, the students in the picture, those are my little kinder babies, and we were doing a little experiment on what's going to happen to the gingerbread when if it didn't have the fox to jump on its back, and what would happen, and it was a whole discussion. So it kind of relates to theory of mind, what we're doing there in that experiment, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, so a little bit about myself. You probably heard the whole bio thing, but just so you kind of know like my background and my experience that influences the activities I lean towards or the different things. So I'm a former kindergarten teacher. I'm a traveler. I've traveled all over Europe. I've traveled to Japan. I do enjoy traveling, especially if that country has a Disney park, I'm going to go. I'm also an auntie, and I put that in air quotes because I don't have any niece or nephew that are blood related. It's all my best friend's children, but they all call me Auntie Randi. I'm a Disney addict. I'm coordinator of PD at FSDB right now, so I coordinate all the professional development K through 12, well really pre-K through 12 for both deaf and blind. I'm a member of the Pineapple PD team, which some of you guys have probably seen videos, and I'm an MIE expert. And I went ahead and dropped my Twitter handle there. You're more than welcome to follow and see content that I share on Twitter. Okay. So now it's time to discuss theory of mind. And I'm also going to be careful about my time because this is one thing that I get overly passionate about, and I also get overly excited that I talk fast. So I'm going to make sure that I maintain a steady pace so we can all follow along. Okay, so theory of mind. This is the definition I pulled that we'll be using for this presentation. So theory of mind, which is shortened to TOM or TOM, is the ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, desires, knowledge, pretending to oneself and to others, and to understand that others may have beliefs, desires, and intentions that differ from their own. So that's kind of the definition we're going to go with as we're working through this presentation. I can hear my dog huffing, so I hope she doesn't start barking. Okay, so theory of mind. Why in the world do I have a cereal box up? Okay, so I'm going to give you a brief example, and this was kind of like my aha, like that's what theory of mind is, because it's sometimes hard to explain that theory of mind is, I mean, it's what that whole definition was, like the thoughts and beliefs and understanding that other people have thoughts and beliefs too. So I have a Cheerio box. Can we see the Cheerio box? All right. What do you guys think is inside this Cheerio box? I'm going to go ahead and open the comments so I can see. So I have, okay, I have some people that are saying not cereal. So, okay, but if you were a little kid or you did not know I was presenting on Theory of Mind, and I asked you what's in the cereal box, you're gonna say Cheerios, because that's what you know is normally in this box. What you didn't know is before this presentation, I put some sequins. Lucy. They're cutting down trees in my neighborhood, which is great when you're working from home and trying to do webinars all the time. So in my Cheerio box, I had these glitter sequins and different spangles. So this was in my Cheerio box. So now everyone in this presentation is aware that Randi put sequins in her Cheerio box. Let's say someone just joined the webinar and I was going to ask them what's in the Cheerio box. They're most likely going to say Cheerios, but we know there's no Cheerios in that box. So that's kind of like an example of theory of mind. I know it's mind-boggling how complex and how obvious it is at the same time. It's the same if I have this crayon box. So what do you think is inside this crayon box? Someone put Cheerios. That's a good guess. Okay, so inside dog food for Lucy, it could be, I'm sure she's wishing it was dog treats in here. It's actually a really tangled rope with little gingerbread little like clips. So once again, if I put this back into the box, and someone else was to come into this room, they're going to think that there's crayons in this box. They're not going to know what we know, but we know that they don't know. Does that kind of make sense? I know it's a little complicated, but that's why I brought props, because props usually help make it a little bit more clear. Okay, so as a review, theory of mind is beliefs, desires, emotions, knowledge, and intentions. Theory of mind is understanding individuals do not know what you know. So just like with the cereal box, like at first I knew what was in the box, you guys didn't know, and then I showed you. So now you know, and I know that you know, and I know that if someone else came in, they wouldn't know. Theory of mind development is influenced by language and experiences. So in those prime years of 0 to 5, when your brain is just like making all these connections and developing and going, that's kind of when all this theory of mind is developing. And so, someone just asked, the crayons are shown on the box. So the box that I have is just one of those like pre-labeled. It's not the cutout with the crayons like showing through. So, it would be easier if you guys were in person. You could see that it was just a printed picture, but that it's kind of a little bit weird. So all that language and experience that a lot of like early childhood educators talk about, or early development people talk about, is always about language and experiences. It's like pushing all that language and experiences, because that's when our brains start making that connection and make meaning of that connection. And that's when theory of mind starts to develop, because it's based on all that language and experience. And like I said, theory of mind is rapidly developing between 0 and 5. Those are like the most important years. Okay, so keep in mind, exposure to language constructs the mind. Developing brains are always making connections. So when we're looking at kids from 0 to 5, specifically even like 0 to 2, a lot of them are not making verbal language or even sign language at that time. It's a lot of like babbles or look at, or like a few word sentences depending. But they always say, like, when a mom's holding a baby, to be like reading to them and talking to them and singing to them, because their little brains are making all these connections. They're making connections based on every experience, all the words. the more those connections are made and encouraged, the brain holds those connections and they don't die off. When it's connected maybe one time and it's not reinforced, it kind of goes away, and that connection isn't going to be there because it isn't put into a place that makes it more meaningful. Okay, so importance of language exposure. So as we know, working in Def Ed, we have a lot of students that have limited or delayed language. And because of that, they have a weak or no theory of mind. So of course, when we're born, in our brains, we have that capacity to develop a theory of mind. So when I say like no theory of mind, it just means like it isn't developing. It hasn't started to like make that progress to be someone that is using, like, that has that competency in theory of mind. So when I say no theory of mind, they can still develop it. It's just when the language is delayed or they have limited, they don't have those connections or experiences to help that theory of mind develop. So let's keep that in mind as we go through this presentation of the importance of language. Like that, I can't share that enough. And language just means language. Like I'm a big pusher for language, whether it's spoken, whether it's ASL, it's just giving a full language to the child so that way they can grow and develop. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the struggles. We talked about the fun part of like all the definitions and whatnot. And so now we're going to talk about all the struggles that they're going to face. And then I'm also going to give you the activities after this to help support these struggles. So as I read through these struggles, I want you in your mind to start like thinking about your students. So I sat through a presentation, I believe like 2 years ago. I was up at Gallaudet for a conference, and they were presenting on theory of mind, all the research for deaf children, it was like heavy research. And I left there and I'm like, okay, I know the struggles, I know, but they didn't provide any activities or support or anything. So that's where my brain came in. I'm like, okay, this is the struggles, where can we come? And that's kind of where this presentation came from, was the need that sometimes when we have the heavy research, we don't have the activities to go along with it. But as that presenter was going through all the struggles, I kept having students pop in my head like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. Like their theory of mind is weak, or, oh, they need that extra little piece. Like that's what they're missing. And so as I go through these struggles, I'm sure students will start popping in your head, or just open your mind up to thinking about those students as I say, like, these struggles are, and maybe that student will kind of pop in your head, and this will be like that puzzle piece that you were missing when working with that student. Okay. So these are the struggles from a weak theory of mind or even late language exposure, both, because remember, language influences the development of theory of mind, so they kind of go hand in hand. And a lot of these are very like abstract concepts. So concept of time, that's a struggle. Cause and effect, emotional regulations, being able to go from neutral to I'm mad and then back down to neutral. Developing relationships, having those relationships with peers, having relationships with adults, abstract concepts. Just like I said, anything that's like kind of complex and not concrete in their hand. Lucy, I apologize. Okay, so acts out feelings. So that acts out is that like throwing themselves on the floor. Like you telling them no, they throw themselves on the floor, or they start throwing things. Like that whole acts feelings out, like not acting like, I don't want to say normal, but typical, like if someone says no, all right, you know, that little disappointment's fine, but the acting out of throwing or throwing themselves on the floor, those type of things that aren't, that kind of don't keep them on that like neutral or that thought through process. I'm sure right now you're probably like thinking like, oh my gosh, I know, like I had several students that would just throw themselves on the floor when I would just say, we're not gonna do that right now, or let's walk instead of run, and it was a whole tantrum for a good 5 minutes. If they have a weak theory of mind or late language exposure, they might have that difficulty learning. So that's where they're going to struggle with reading and writing or math, those type of anything that supports their learning. And then also a reduced fund of information. that means like they don't have those experiences to pull from to help support those connections. So that's kind of why like that reduced fund of information, that has to come from all that language and experiences. And we know as educators, we always need to push in that background knowledge, those hands-on experiences. This is fun. And all those like different types of things to kind of support that student. So in building that fund of knowledge that they can pull from to make those connections. Okay, so this is one thing to know. So as we keep pushing in all this information to the kid and we're giving them all these things, we notice as educators that they'll sometimes overgeneralize. I even think about it when you're teaching students that they can add an S to everything and it makes it plural. And then they don't realize that some words need ES and it kind of changes depending on the word, or some words completely change when they're plural because they overgeneralize. They learn this rule and now they have to test it out until they figure out how it actually works. So that applies for everything. So children need to establish internal rules before they can apply exceptions. So that means they kind of take in that knowledge, they internalize it, maybe they test it out, and then finally they'll come up with those rules and understand like, oh, this situation doesn't count. I have to apply it like to this situation a little bit different. Okay, so now the fun part. Supporting theory of mind in the classroom. So I do have to warn, all my pictures do show kindergarten and below. And that's just because those are the pictures I have. But every single activity can totally be adjusted K through 12. It just takes a little bit of creativity or tweaking. But the important part is I put kind of like the name of the strategy or activity. So then that way you can find that same strategy or activity for like your grade level. Okay, so like I said, concept of time. This is one of my little nieces. She's a twin, and today is her 4th birthday. And this picture, I believe she's 2. And so I'm excited. I'll be FaceTiming her later to say happy birthday. But anyway, so concept of time. That's like the order of the day. So in the classroom, so students that are struggling with concept of time might not understand when you're saying like, so it's morning, and then you're saying, in the evening, we'll do that activity. Like they don't always understand that whole order of the day. So they need more of those visuals to kind of support them. So morning, noon, evening, that concept of time is just not going to happen for them. Like they're going to struggle through that. And I also need a note going back a little bit because I'm going ahead of myself. So there could be a student that might struggle with only like 2 of all those things. Just because they struggle with one doesn't mean like their theory mind's weak. That just means they have that one struggle. Just like any other concept, students are going to have different things. They might have a little bit of all of them. They might only struggle with relationships. It basically is based on their language and experiences of what has developed the strongest. But this is where you can see that they have the struggles and they are missing those specific concept of time pieces. The next thing is like schedule of events. I know when I was in the classroom, if I was like, all right, we're going to do journal work, go to PE, we're going to go to math, and then you can have that special snack. Like I had students that could not, just me verbally telling them or talking to like, oh no, math time, we'll do that. And then like 5 minutes later, like, so are we going to do that now? I'm like, no, math time. Like that whole scheduling of events is just a whole lost art. Same with past, present, future. If you ask them, like, what did you do yesterday? Like, they might not be able to tell you. And doing that whole first, second, third. Most of the time, every kid is great doing first in line because they want to be first in line. But then after that, the whole concept of second, third, fourth, or what's next, or retelling a story, like first this happened, second, third, that's a complete struggle for those students. So in the classroom, the best thing you can do is provide like hands-on sequencing activities. So first, next, then last. So what you see in this picture is, so we read a story about growing specific vegetables to help us make a pizza, and then we made a pizza using different ingredients. But the students had to go through a whole, like, first we do this, then we do this, and then we did it step by step. We made our pizzas, we cooked them, and we ate them. So now when I went to go back and we're talking about the sequence events, that's building that fund of knowledge. Like, oh yeah, I remember at the pizza, like we did first this, second this, and they're able to apply it to different concepts. It's also important to go concrete to complex, and that goes across the board for anything. So anytime you're teaching something new, you usually teach it hands-on, very concrete, where it's there, and then you move to a more complex, abstract thought. And like I just said, we registered about making pizza, then we sequenced how to make pizza. While we made the pizza, we wrote it out, and then we had manipulatives at the end where they had to like kind of make a fake pizza with paper, just to kind of show like they understand what's first, second, third. Like they're not going to put the sauce on last after they bake it. This is going to be the order. So it's a great practice, and all kids love food. You don't have to do food. It could be anything. It could simply be sequencing a story. I've seen that viral video going around where the dad was reading his kid's homework, and the kid had to write how to make a peanut butter sandwich, and he like missed steps. So the dad acted out like what the kid said, and the kid's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like you have to do the knife to get the peanut butter on, that whole thing. That kind of goes into the whole sequencing of activities. And we sequence all the time. It's just turning it and making it more purposeful when we're doing those kind of activities. Like, so if we're aware, like, oh, this sequencing activity will promote theory of mind with that student, we'll be more purposeful with our language by making sure we're always saying first, next, then last. Because the more we say the same words, first, next, then last, using it in language, math, social studies, we're always using those same words. That will help develop that connection in that student's brain. And then eventually you can apply it to other concepts by saying maybe first, second, third, fourth, that type of thing. So it's important to like at first use the same language and then build upon it. So these are just some great examples of supporting concept of time in the classroom. So sequencing a story, talking about your day. Like, so morning meeting was always my time to really push in those personal, relatable experiences. So I'm not going to read through all of these because I'm watching the time and I'm running out and we have a lot to get through. But it could be growing flowers, acting out. I always say the important thing. So I really study in early childhood education. So I have a lot of my friends come to me and they're like, what's the best thing I can do? And I say to talk. Just talk out loud all the time, or sign out loud all the time. Always be showing what your thought is in your head, because that models it to the student, and then eventually they're going to start to copy it. So when you start feeling crazy, like I'm talking too much, that's when you know you're doing it right, because that student or child is going to be mimicking what's going on. Okay, so cause and effect. This is the other little twin playing with blocks. So he liked to play with blocks and then like knock them down, and then we get upset because at his age, he doesn't realize like, oh, I build it, I push it over. Well, now it's broken. So he's starting to learn that whole, if I do this, then this happens. He learns consequences. If I knock over these blocks, then they're gonna be broken. I don't have my beautiful castle anymore. And then so if the student's struggling, they're not going to be able to do those if-then statements. They're going to struggle with the fact of consequences, like, oh, I can't throw my pencil at my teacher and not get points taken away. Like that whole concept is like, they don't understand that their action results in a consequence. And then they also struggle with just like simple problem solving. All right, so the one thing I did that I found was like so beneficial to the students was for cause and effect was doing STEAM in the classroom, or even maker spaces would work the same, both concepts. So we did like Polar Express build a bridge. They had to figure out how to build a bridge. Here's your materials. And then they figured out like when it was successful or not. Same with the gingerbread man and making like toothpicks. So they got to have those hands-on concrete experiences to start making those connections as we talk through the scenarios. So once again, I provided all these different lists, and RMTC will be sharing out this PowerPoint so you guys can read more in depth, like all the different things. But like I said, there's always gonna be that column with talking out loud, because I really do think that's important. Same with hands-on and exploration and play. It doesn't matter if you're 15 in high school, if something's hands-on and it's meaningful to you, you're going to be more open to making that connection in your brain because it's relatable and meaningful to your needs. The hands-on activities can be as simple as like most morning meetings, you guys talk about like weather, or I had a little cute little panda that we would dress like with the matching clothes for the weather outside. I mean, Florida, it's always hot, so it's kind of hard to do these weather things, but we'll talk about like, oh, the people up north, let's look at pictures. Would they wear a bathing suit when it's snowing? That goes into cause and effect. Also, anything like you could role play, talk it out, all those sort of things. Okay, emotional regulation. So the student, if they're struggling, cannot go from neutral, anxious to scared. They're gonna go neutral to scared, and they're not gonna be able to be brought down. It's basically like one extreme to the other. But a student that has a good theory of mind and is solid, they'll be able to go through those emotions, and they'll be able to get back to neutral, and they'll understand their own emotions. So I always like to point out this picture. I always had a very high energy group, a group that just needed some like extra love and extra encouragement, which I liked because I'm not a very much sit at one spot. I like that we would be on the floor, we would be over here, we would be doing all these like activities. So this day, I remember this day so clearly. I was so overwhelmed and frustrated and all these things. So I told the class, I'm like, we're going to take a little break, because I was like, Randi needs a teacher break. And so we decided to go walk around the Intercoastal. So if you've been to FSDB, we have a beautiful waterfront school. And so we would walk and we would go look at the dolphins. We would talk about what we would see and why we can only see dolphins at high tide. And my instructional aide took this picture of all of us like holding hands and walking. But it was also a good experience for the students to see me go from neutral to a little bit frustrated to like, okay, guys, I need a break and you guys need a break. We all seem a little frustrated with this activity. Let's go take a break. And then we came back inside and they were ready to learn and ready to go with the text. It was just one of those days that we were all a little off. We also had the elf on the shelf. That's what that picture is. The elf on the shelf was always a little naughty. I always did tell my parents before I did elf on the shelf, just because it could cause issues. I always said elf on the shelf was just a character. He had no relation to anything. He was just basically a character in a story. He lived in the very cold, but he always came down to make sure everyone was behaving. And so we would always talk about like, what would the elf think of this behavior? Like they were acting up, all those sorts of things. And because we were talking about the elf's perspective, they kind of could internalize like how they were feeling. Okay, so one of my favorite things, Inside Out. So that one group that you saw me like holding hands with. So every year that I taught, I had to change my behavior system. So by being adaptable, I was able to fit the needs of my group, and then that way they were able to learn a lot about themselves, and then they were able to be successful learners in the classroom because the behavior chart fit their needs. So my first year, I did the clip up, clip down. It worked perfect for that group. The second year, we didn't even need to do it. We had their own personal, they would like check it out and earn money. I also did like a caterpillar one where they could work their way up the pyramid. And then my favorite one was this Inside Out one. So they got like, as they worked through their periods of the day, they could move up. This group really struggled with just talking about emotions. So like right now we know emotions are high, we're in the unknown, it's stressful. So think of those students that don't know how to say, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm scared. Well, it was perfect timing because around this time that I had this class, Inside Out had just hit the theaters. Well, I had a student obsessed with drawing it, and she was obsessed with disgust, and she would behave like disgust in the classroom. Well, if you've seen the movie, you know disgust has an attitude. She's kind of like, I don't really care. Well, that's really hard when you're trying to teach. So I explained to the student that I was Joy. Joy was ready to learn. Joy was ready to work. Joy was happy and didn't feel anxious. She was ready to go. And I was like, but sometimes Joy did feel a little sad, and sometimes Joy felt a little mad, and sometimes she was a little bit scared, and sometimes she had an attitude because maybe she didn't sleep enough the night before. And when I wasn't feeling joy, that's where I had to separate myself to a space that wasn't joy required is what I called it, or ready to learn behavior. And as you can see in this middle picture shows my little like calm down area. I was very blessed in my classroom that I had this kind of spot that I could put a little couch. I put some rip up paper. I have one of those like glitter shake jars that this wonderful parent made for me. And then I put the little inside out characters that I downloaded from, I believe Disney had the PDFs you could download. And so the student could go over there and say like, I'm feeling mad, and he would go, or she would go, either one. It was open to the whole class. If I was teaching, they weren't allowed to do that. If they were doing like other work, or if I told them like, maybe it's time to go over and go sit in the calm down area. And then when you're ready to be joy again, let's come over. So in the joy areas of my classroom, I had the joy icon. One of my favorite Etsy shops just came out with these cute magnets. I don't know if you guys, I'm going to try to hold them all up. She is my favorite Etsy shop. I buy most of my Disney shirts from her, and she makes these adorable doodle magnets. So she made these inside out ones, and I wish I was still in the classroom because these would be up, and then I would be talking about how we're feeling. Also in that group, we had, we would talk about inside out. So this is a great book if you're working with littles. It has one of each book. And then each book talks about the emotions. So we got to like talk about like when I'm joy, I feel this, different things. And it was very beneficial for those students that have never talked about their emotions. So for your older kids, you could always find books that have characters that have different emotions in them. So when you're dissecting those characters, you can kind of talk about like, how do you think they were feeling and that type of thing. Also, each student had, a little piece of paper. I had a bigger board that I had on my board where I taught. And I would tell the students like, okay, right now I'm feeling this. And then that day that I was like feeling really frustrated, I put the mad face. Because by doing that, I was modeling to the students that I have feelings too, and I sometimes am angry, and I'm sometimes sad, because sometimes the students don't realize what they're feeling inside is something that everyone feels. So I used Inside Out, but really could use any character in a book that could kind of can kind of help you out. The Once Upon a T-shirt is the Etsy shop that does these cute little doodles. I have so many in my office. I can share that link with RMTC. She is also the sweetest lady, and also she used to be a teacher in the classroom. So she would be so excited if you went and purchased her doodles to use for this kind of thing. So like I said, I just kind of showed you some of my props, like that whole, like, I'm feeling annoyed. So I'm talking out loud as a teacher, or I spill my water. Oh, I'm so frustrated with myself. I can't believe I just spilled my water. That's something you could do K through 12. You as a teacher are showing that, yes, I'm frustrated, just spilled water all over my desk, but I'm able to clean it up and then go back to neutral and go about my day. I'm not going to stop teaching. I'm not going to stop doing my work. That shows the students like, okay, we all have feelings. We're all kind of going through something. Another fun one that kind of shows that explosive behavior is that Coke and Mentos. If you drop a Mentos and a Coke, it kind of explodes. You can kind of have that dialogue with students. Like if you don't work your way up, you're going to be Coke and Mentos. You're just going to explode everywhere, and then I can't get you back in. All those different things kind of help them emotionally regulate and learn those skills. And then that tantruming and those other behaviors start to lessen as they start learning and making those connections. Relationships. So that's my little fur ball that you probably saw in the background earlier. A student that has a strong theory of mind is able to empathize. They're able to negotiate, and they're problem solving. So this picture is actually sweet little Ella, who turned 4 today. She is negotiating with my dog to sit by her. She was a little frustrated that Lucy was sitting by her brother, so she decided if I feed this dog, it's going to come sit with me. And then Lucy, of course, like, all right, if you feed me, I'll sit with you over your brother. So she's learning as her 2-year-old self, like, I can negotiate to get what I want. If you're watching at playtime and you see a kid's like, I want to play with you, and the other kid's like, no, I don't want to play that, and then the other one just like stomps off and like walks away, they've aren't developing that sense of negotiation. So that would kind of be where a teacher could help model or kind of put a student with them that can help model how to, well, if I play ball with you for 5 minutes, maybe I'll do the jump rope with you. That whole negotiating, like give and take, compromising, empathy, understanding, like, oh, they're crying. I wonder if I hurt their feelings or that type of thing. Because sometimes when a student has a weak theory of mind, they might do something to hurt an individual and not understand why they're upset and how their actions made that person upset. And then they don't understand why that person doesn't want to be their friend. So that leads down to understanding social cues. They don't understand, why don't they want to be my friend? Those type of things, if they don't have that strong theory of mind. And it also supports a positive well-being. So if you see students that struggle with like mental health or anxiety or different things, some of what could be the foundation of that could be theory of mind. Of course, there's situations that arise and things that cause turmoil in a kid's life or causes other issues. But a student that has like social emotional competency and a strong theory of mind, they're going to have a very positive well-being about themselves. So sometimes you just need to take that extra 5 minutes to listen, explain, or provide that valuable information. That could just be like looking up from your computer, giving that student that attention to discuss, and also just developing that rapport and relationships with your students. So you're kind of working them through those techniques of negotiation in a sense. Of course, you're the teacher and they shouldn't be like trying to negotiate while you're instructing. This would be more like in between lessons, or like as you can see in this picture, like we were doing a presentation and we were like talking through a certain situation. So it's those type of things, like having that rapport with your students. So once again, here are some activities that you can do to kind of support that. A lot of times, there was times that I would have the counselor come in or co-teacher come in, and we would model like talking through or negotiating or working through things. And then I could also use language like, oh, Sally's my friend because she's nice and she shares. I like hanging out with Sally. And then they realize like, oh, maybe that's why that person doesn't want to play with me because I'm not being nice to them. And they start making those connections once again. And the more those connections are made, then they stick and they aren't just like dissolved off. So it's important to do that. And then also just like even reading books and different exposure to kind of build that experience that they might not have otherwise. Oh, one fun thing, some of our students do at our school, they do escape rooms. I never did an escape room with my kinders, but I know some of the upper elementary does escape rooms. That's the perfect way to make students work on relationships, because if you want to get out of the room in an hour, you need to work together, negotiate, problem solve. So that's the perfect way to kind of like crash course, get them to work together. Okay, so abstract concepts. When you're teaching abstract concepts you need to do it through hands-on activity first. So like moon cycles is near impossible when you're talking to kindergartners because like yeah, the moon's in the sky, like it has a face on it, it's dark out, there's stars. But we monitored the moon every day for a whole month, and then we did the Oreo thing. And so we did hands-on stuff, so then when I read the book and we talked about it, they already had that hands-on to help with them with that abstract concept. So that's kind of how they learn, like through play and also just through hands-on experiences. And then making sure everything's kind of relatable and explored with them. So if it's relatable and you're talking to them about it, or maybe they're going through like a sensory event or working through a project or you're on a field trip, if they're with an adult, that adult can provide that language model, whether it's your para or yourself. You can kind of talk through like what they're seeing. I see new moms all the time that are talking to their babies and they're like, oh, look at your cute red shirt. Your red shirt's so cute. It matches your red ball. And so now the baby's like looking at the ball and it's red, red. Oh, red. They both are red. And then later maybe the mom's like, oh, you got red ketchup everywhere. So now the kid's picking up red, red, red. That's a pattern. I'm seeing red on these places. Eventually they're going to realize red's a color, and then the ball is a thing. And so they kind of start figuring it out that way by making experiences from the adult modeling. And then another thing is developed through play is using objects as something else. If you've ever seen, you know those little like connecting cubes? the little connecting cubes used for math. Boys and girls, I guess both, everyone loves making those connecting cubes into guns. That's just like the big thing. They always do that. Well, I mean, they're showing that they kind of they understand abstract concepts because they're taking something that's not supposed to be that and they're making it into something else. So if they use their pencil like an airplane, they're showing that they're able to imagine in their head that that item is actually something else. So that actually shows they understand abstract concepts, but it also is very annoying when they make your cubes into guns while you're trying to teach a math lesson. Silver lining. Okay, reduced fund of information. So this is one of my favorite pictures from my little kinders. Usually in presentations where I can see people's faces, I always ask them, like, what do you think they're listening for from the, like on the floor? And yes, most of them are profound. So why do you think they're trying to listen on the floor as we're walking back from honor roll? I'll give you guys a minute if anyone wants to answer. I'm watching my time too. I have like a couple more minutes. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say it just for time. So we're walking back from honor roll. So most people will probably guess they're listening for the water going down. It's a storm drain. They're thinking, well, so I go over and I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're listening for the Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles are down here. But that's because in their fund of information, they've only seen those sewer drains as the home for Ninja Turtles. So if they didn't, like, that's where that's their experience, that's their language. They see that, they're like, Ninja Turtles, and that's what they went for. So their experiences help them build that background knowledge. So they pull that background knowledge out and they're like, Ninja Turtles must be here. This is the same as I saw on my TV show. And then, so we had a good discussion about, like, well, this is actually this, but you know how you see the water and you see this, it's dark. It looks similar down there, but there's no pizza. But they were able to kind of discuss it because they had that background knowledge to pull from for us to build upon. And I'm sure a lot of you know the importance of background knowledge. It's always like pushed into our brains when we're working with our deaf students, and even in just general ed, the importance of having that background knowledge and like helping build it. And then they can use that background knowledge to dialogue or play. You might see, like, if we go back to that first photo that we were looking at when the little girl was taking pictures of her Duffy and Shelly Mae. She was taking pictures because her mom is always taking pictures. So she knew it was bedtime. The mom always took a cute picture while they were reading a story or like in their bed, like getting cuddled up. So the girl was copying what she sees. So she's taking that experience that she knows her mom takes photos, and now she's duplicating that. It's the same when you see little kids doing a play kitchen and all those sorts of things. So if we imagine our current students and they're lacking certain skills, that might be because 0 to 5, they didn't do all that imaginative play or that negotiating those other social emotional skills that should have been developing due to language and experiences. So now is the time to kind of give them those experiences with an adult support to provide that language, because it does get harder when that window at 8 years old starts to close with language, but you can still kind of shove stuff in there. Okay, so I made this easy little chart that basically takes everything that I talked about in the presentation and just makes it into a beautiful spreadsheet, because I like a one-pager with information. So you could just print out this slide, and if you're like, okay, weak concept of time, you can kind of go there and look at what would support that. So definitely save this. Okay, so we're gonna review, and then I'm done, and I'm gonna open it up to any questions. So we're gonna review real quick, and then I'm done. Theory of mind. So theory of mind is beliefs, desires, emotions, knowledge, and intentions. It's the understanding that individuals do not know what we know. Due to language delay, deaf and hard of hearing students might have a weak or no theory of mind that's developing. And then their struggles could be concept of time, abstract concepts, relationships, like regulating their emotions and like acting out. By providing that meaningful language in every situation, talking about the world around you, whether it's the tree you're walking past, whether it's talking about the classrooms, things up on the wall in the classroom, any thought that's in your head that's going to give them that language exposure, background experiences, and some knowledge to help build connections. Providing meaningful experiences, whether that's, like I said, walking around, going on field trips, things in the class that are hands-on, helps the students grow that background knowledge. And explicit instruction is important for these students that are struggling. They can't just infer or guess what you're trying to teach them. You might need to give them explicit instruction, like maybe having a schedule. It's hard to see on the camera, but like a schedule clipped down of what they do first and second. Maybe something, or as a result, having that behavior chart so they see, if I do this, this is what happens. So it's explicit. Okay, so experiences that are meaningful, language exposure equals theory of mind development. So remember, experiences and language, if that's the two things that you take away from today, just pushing those in will really help support that theory of mind. And I hope that this kind of helped you guys, I hope this kind of helped you guys think about your students and like maybe this is the missing puzzle piece that will support them. So that is all I have presentation-wise. I'm not sure if Kara wants to open up for questions.
Hey, Randi, we have 3 questions in the question and answer box. Can you see that, or do you want me to read them?
I can't really hear you, so I'm going to read them. I found them.
Okay. I need to get closer.
As with state testing, how do we get students through that with this block of first, second, third? So everything we do basically has first, second, third. We see it in science, that's how you do a lab. We see it in math, that's how you do your math processes. So it's important that when teachers are working with a student, they notice one student is struggling, to try to keep doing that first, second, third language and then building upon. That student might be, let's say it's a high school student, they might just need a week straight of that exposure, like first, second, third. And then maybe week 2, it goes, oh wait, first, next, then last. So do that for a week straight and in every subject. And like ask the teachers to do the same if they can. Then that next week build upon and be like, do you know first, next, then last is also first, second, third, fourth? And then kind of just like keep building because you're building off a foundation. So if you think about anything you build, you always need that foundation to go up or connect to. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of fall apart. Okay, someone asked, a lot of times in the classroom, there's no hands-on. There's a lot of worksheets. That's a problem for weak theory of mind, correct? Well, it went away. Time is a consideration, suggestions. Can't talk. Yes, so like anything, time is always an important thing. That's why I say even if you just have those like extra 5 minutes, I would always build in my hands-on activities with a certain lesson, whether it was like my engagement piece or the final assessment. It kind of just depends like how your classroom's set up, what grade level, but like I think it's important to at least just find a little bit of time to do something that's meaningful and relatable to their experience. And then last one. Did you say you'd share the slides of the workshop? Yes, so I shared the PDF with RMTC, so they have it, and when this is uploaded, I'm sure that will be shared out.
So I just dropped the link for where it will be shared for them to get to it. So we will soon have the video so you can rewatch it, and in addition, the PowerPoint will be there for you to download. I also posted the link for our survey. And did we have any more questions?
Oh, one just popped up. Even using the inside-out characters for feelings is abstract. What would you suggest for something even more concrete to teach? Picture their own facials. You could do that. We tried. It was just it could just be an FSDB thing. I can't speak for everyone. We didn't want to like if they personally, so like when we would have the discussions about like how we would feel, and I used these books. So we started with these books before I did the classroom management. There's one for each character. So we spent a whole week in our morning meeting and we did like a book chat. These poor books are so like ripped up. So like it talks about like joy and like all our happiness and all that. And then I would ask them like, So when you feel happy, what does your face look like? What do you feel? What do you do that makes you joyful? So each day we like spent time on a character before I implemented that behavior chart. And of course, like anything, it takes a little time to get used to, but we kind of built upon by relating it to themselves and how they feel. If you have students that struggle, I would use a mirror. Unless the kid is like posing to take those pictures. I don't ever take a picture of the kid in the action of doing that behavior. They could either do it in the mirror or they could like, pose, take a picture. Like I look angry like this or whatever, that sort of thing. So I hope that kind of answers that question.
Then we had one more question. Lisa posted it in the chat. Having trouble scrolling now.
I love ideas for teaching advanced theory of mind skills for CI kids with strong academic skills. Having already exhausted materials in theory of mind materials room, I feel like the theory of mind 2 assessment is more subjective measurement of the parent's perception of the child's ability than objective measure. I would say I would just keep building upon what those skills are already there by challenging them. So kind of looking at what those struggles could be, find where their struggles are, and then keep building upon it in a more advanced way. I don't have specific ideas on advanced, like in my presentation. I was kind of just going with just the initial beginning stuff, but like everything, you might start with pictures and then move to words. You might make it relate more to them. You might make them produce a book or write something and kind of go from the other perspective of what would they know. There's also there's several YouTube videos. If you look up theory of mind, you'll see researchers with kids going through like this role play and then saying like, oh, there's a mouse and all this. And then this mouse walks away. Well, this mouse hid the cheese under the couch and now this mouse came back. Can they find the cheese? Like doing that whole role playing and then asking the kids to do it themselves. That's one way. If you're using fingerspeller way of reading, which if you come to the training I've done with RMTC or the other RMTC training of fingerspeller way of reading, it's beautiful because they embed theory of mind stories and questions within their curriculum, which is really cool.
And I taught middle school, and many of my students still needed theory of mind. And I used to really pair up with my guidance counselor. We need to use our resources and remember that, they have a plethora of resources, even in guidance, and they can help guide you to those different resources and helping you break down those skills. So really work closely with your guidance counselor because they're also a part of your team and can really bring some great resources. And I thank you so much for joining us today, Randi. This was great information.
Thank you for watching the recording of this TA Live webinar. RMTC-DHH is a discretionary project under the Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services, and all of the services we provide are free. To continue our work, we must collect survey data to justify why our services are needed. Please complete this survey so we can continue to provide services to the state of Florida. The survey link is bit.ly/RMTC-eval, or simply scan the QR code. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at info@rmtcdhh.org or visit our website, rmtcdhh.org. Keep in touch with us by following us on Facebook and Twitter. We also have a Vimeo and YouTube channel with a plethora of videos of our presentations, our TA Live webinars, and best practices for working with students who are DHH.